We must break free from the petty politics of the past. America is a nation of believers, dreamers, and strivers that is being led by a group of censors, critics, and cynics. Remember, all of the people telling you you can't have the country you want are the same people that wouldn't stand. I mean, they said Trump doesn't have a chance of being here tonight. Not a chance. The same people. Oh, we love defeating those people, don't we? Don't we love defeating those people? Love it, love it, love it. No longer can we rely on those same people in the media and politics who will say anything to keep our rigged system in place. Instead, we must choose to believe in America. History is watching us now. We don't have much time, but history is watching. It's waiting to see if we will rise to the occasion and if we will show the whole world that America is still free and independent and strong. I am asking for your support tonight so that I can be your champion in the White House, and I will be your champion. My opponent asks her supporters to recite a three-word loyalty pledge. It reads, "I'm with her." I choose to recite a different pledge. My pledge reads, "I'm with you, the American people." I am your voice. So to every parent who dreams for their child and every child who dreams for their future, I say these words to you tonight. I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. To all Americans tonight, in all of our cities and in all of our towns, I make this promise. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.
So you're watching live pictures of Republican presidential hopeful Donald Trump there delivering his keynote speech to the party faithful at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. It was an energetic and wide-ranging speech, full of promises delivered there, as you can see, to rapturous applause. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan in Doha with the world news from Al Jazeera. Donald Trump has accepted the presidential nomination of the Republican Party.
I humbly and gratefully accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States.
He addressed the Republican convention outlining his vision to lead the United States if he becomes the president. He says he wants to put America first by renegotiating existing trade deals and stopping illegal immigration. Trump took on Democrat rival Hillary Clinton for her decisions as Secretary of State in the Obama administration, criticizing her for the Iran nuclear deal and the crisis in the Middle East. Let's get more down, talk to Alan Fisher. He's been watching all the events behind him there. Alan, this was a crucial speech for Donald Trump. It was pre-prepared, but did he stick to the message? What did you make of the tone and the messaging?
Well, I think this speech will be summed up in 4 words: I'm your voice. And that really explains why Donald Trump is where he is this evening. He has managed to tap into working class resentment across America about the way they feel the system is rigged, the way that things haven't got better for them over the last 16 years. And he is saying that he will make things different. And those are the words, I am your voice, will be what this speech is mainly remembered for. He was wide-ranging, he covered many issues, but many people are already suggesting it was a dark speech. He suggested where things have gone wrong for America, where things are difficult for America. And while he said he knew what these were and he would change them, he offered no specifics. So that's important. Just a couple of things that I pulled out from the speech. He talked about law and order on several occasions. This will be remembered when Donald Trump went Nixonian, Nixon in '68. At the time there was great upheaval in the United States, talked about being the law and order candidate, how he was going to restore order to the streets, which was seeing riots in all the major cities. Now, as Donald Trump himself has said, this is not 1968 in America, but people are concerned. So by constantly repeating law and order, he's tapping in to those fears. Another thing that I thought was important when he rode back ever so slightly on the idea of banning Muslims from entering the country. Remember, it's several months ago now, December last year in fact, when he said that he would suspend all Muslim immigration into the United States until, in his words, the authorities worked out what the hell was going on. Well, that has changed now. He says that there is going to be suspend immigration from countries compromised by terrorism. Interestingly enough, he also criticised the North American Free Trade Deal, NAFTA, which he said was signed by Bill Clinton. That, in fact, is true, but it was a deal that was pushed by a Republican president, steered through the House by one of his biggest supporters, Newt Gingrich, and, of course, supported by his own Vice President, Mike Pence. So this was an interesting speech. The traditional balloon drop is going on now. It's so iconic. You see it all of these events. But I suspect that the critics will also look at Donald Trump and some of the things he said, talking about tax cuts, when just months ago he was talking about imposing a tax on the super rich. And some of his positions have clearly flipped from the past. But he believes, obviously, this is a message that will carry him to the White House, that he'll be able to do what Mitt Romney didn't do 4 years ago, what John McCain didn't do 8 years ago, and that is put a Republican in Pennsylvania Avenue.
And Alan, as we watch those balloons falling onto that rapturous crowd there at the convention center, he attacked Hillary Clinton pretty much throughout the entire speech. There was one significant point where he attacked her over her Middle East policy. Let's just listen to what he had to say.
Iraq is in chaos. Iran is on the path to nuclear weapons. Syria is engulfed in a civil war, and a refugee crisis now threatens the West. After 15 years of wars in the Middle East, after trillions of dollars spent and thousands of lives lost, the situation is worse than it has ever been before. This is the legacy of Hillary Clinton: death, destruction, terrorism, and weakness.
So Donald Trump there attacking Hillary Clinton on her legacy in the Middle East, Alan, but he didn't actually offer much in terms of specifics, in terms of his foreign policy strategies.
No, he didn't. It was interesting that the tone of his speech was different. There were no insults. Donald Trump was reading from a prompter. You could tell at times he wanted to go slightly off message, but reined himself in. But there was no mention of lying Ted Cruz or crooked Hillary Clinton. And in fact, when the crowd at one point chanted, "Lock her up," he calmed them down and said, let's just defeat her in November. This was Donald Trump speaking beyond the hall, to the independents that may be wavering, to the Democrats that aren't quite convinced that Hillary Clinton is the candidate for them. This is the people he needs to reach to win the presidency. And you're right, when it came to foreign policy, there wasn't a great deal beyond we shall defeat ISIS, that we shall look at our relationships with NATO. And he said countries that don't contribute to American troops being there, well, they've got to pay their fair share. That goes against the policy of every single administration since the Second World War, who believe that bases in places like South Korea, just across the border from the north, help keep peace in that part of the world, that bases in Japan are strategically important to United States interests, particularly in the Pacific region, and that picture is repeated across the country. So when he says he's ready to draw these people away, to draw America out there, then that makes it very difficult for the policymakers who believe that that is essential for American safety. But as Donald Trump said, he's challenging established ideas, established politicians, established policies. He's going to look at them again, and he is going to change them. So a statement of intent, but over the next few months, and particularly as he gets to the debates in September and October, he will come under pressure to put some flesh on the bones. People have been saying since January he's got to start adding detail, and the campaign have said it's coming, it's coming. But here we are at the end of July, and we're still no wiser of what he would do to defeat ISIL. We're still no wiser on how he would renegotiate trade deals, on what he would do with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and what he would offer. And when they say they will repeal and replace Obamacare, something that 20 million Americans have signed up to, we know he'll repeal and replace, but replace it with what? Republicans have been talking about it for 6 years. The American people will want to know what they're getting in its place. Donald Trump, as a businessman, wouldn't do a deal unless he knew what he was getting, and I think the American people might start to begin the same way. But for the people in the hall, he ticked all the boxes, said everything that they wanted, and the cheers were massive. I just want to make one other point, Darren. 4 years ago, Mitt Romney was criticized, and criticized heavily, for making a speech at a Republican convention which did not mention troops serving abroad at the moment, particularly in Afghanistan. And Donald Trump has, if that is an error, repeated that error.
Yeah, and Alan, as we watch Trump still taking the applause, I think he's leaving the stage. These are the pictures we're seeing now. But, Alan, he did quite cleverly weave a sort of patriotic thread through much of the speech. He talked about promising to put America first, Americanism, not globalism. Let's listen into that part of the speech.
The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo as long as we are led by politicians who will not put America first. Then we can be assured that other nations will not treat America with respect, the respect that we deserve. The American people will come first once again.
So, Alan, Trump there talking about Americanism over globalism. How much did that resonate with the crowd there?
People loved it. And you got chants of USA, USA. You're right, he tapped into a vein of patriotism which exists in America and runs very deep below the surface. But many people believe that the America First idea is a throwback to the 1930s, that it wasn't successful, and they're not entirely sure how you can do that in a modern world where everything is so interconnected. Of course, people will point out when Donald Trump talks about making businesses come back to the United States, he himself expanded his brand and manufactured shirts, ties, various other things in places like Bangladesh and Indonesia. So they'll wonder how what he promises tallies up with what he's delivered. But certainly the American First thing is a theme he picked up on almost by accident in an interview with the New York Times a couple of months ago when he was trying to articulate his policy, and one of the journalists said, so essentially what you're saying is America first, and he said, yes, I like that. and he started to use it more and more in his speeches, and it has come to encapsulate what he wants to do with the economy in the United States, that he will put America first. And so that is going to be a recurring theme, particularly on the campaign trail. And we can tell you that from here, he's going to hit the campaign trail on Friday, taking his message to the country and trying to overshadow Hillary Clinton at her convention in Philadelphia. And he's going to make a lot of stops in important states like Pennsylvania, like Ohio, like upstate New York, places where jobs have been lost, like Michigan, where jobs have been lost, where manufacturing has disappeared, where industries like steel have been decimated by the global economy, and he will try to get the voters there to buy into his idea and vote for him come November.
Alan, just before you go, let me get a final thought from you. It's been a long night from you, but I mean, many pundits say, and when we spoke to you earlier, you echoed this, is that Trump needs to appeal to people outside of the convention hall. Do you think he's done enough then to reach those independent voters with a sort of wide-ranging, broad, populist message?
Well, if you want a populist message, if you want your enthusiasm for your country re-established, if you believe that America has had a tough time over the last 8 years with the Obama administration, then Donald Trump will definitely have touched you and make you think again about voting for him. If you sit back and say, okay, give us details to what you're proposing, then maybe not. Thinking back 4 years, Mitt Romney hoped for a bounce out of the convention in Tampa. He got up in the opinion polls by about 1 or 2%. Donald Trump is polling around the 40% mark and doesn't seem to be able to get beyond that. Now, he's getting closer to Hillary Clinton because her support is going down. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any bump at all from this convention. Normally, you need a 5, 6, 7% bump. It will be interesting to see the opinion polls, which will probably start to come out on Monday or Tuesday, to just see how strongly Donald Trump's America First message and I'm your voice will resonate with the American public.
All right, Alan Fisher there at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. Alan, thank you. Well, Donald Trump was once considered a long-shot candidate for the White House, but he now has the support of the Republicans to challenge his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton. Al Jazeera's Patty Culhane reports now on the man behind the politics.
We want Trump! We want Trump!
Few predicted that would be the name Republicans shouted at their convention.
Donald J. Trump is truly an instrument of...
His has been a virtually unprecedented path to the Republican presidential nomination. He was born to a life of privilege in this New York suburb. Receiving an economics degree from a prestigious business school, he turned his sights on Manhattan and the family business, developing real estate. With his father's help and money, he launched into big-name projects that always carried his name in big gold letters. His biographers describe an insecure man who lived for, who craved attention. And he got it. For his affairs and 2 divorces, fortunes lost and found again. Local journalists say they would often get calls from someone describing himself as a Trump spokesman, boasting about his conquests. He sounded a lot like Trump himself.
He's somebody that has a lot of options, and frankly, he gets called by everybody. He gets called by everybody in the book in terms of women.
The man who sells himself as a successful businessman has had his share of financial difficulties, 4 company bankruptcies, more than average in the U.S. Still, his reputation landed him a popular reality television show where people competed to work for him.
You're fired.
His supporters say they like that he's a self-described billionaire and that he's brash.
He speaks from the heart. He's not a politician.
He's broken all the long-held rules of politics, insulting women, Native Americans, Mexicans, Muslims, even a disabled man.
This guy, I don't know what I said,
But nothing has stopped him from reaching this stage, even though he's made few concrete campaign promises.
I am going to be the greatest jobs president that God ever created.
His agenda includes imposing harsh tariffs on Chinese goods, renegotiating the free trade agreement with Mexico and Canada. Michael D'Antonio, who wrote a biography on Trump, doesn't think he'll follow through on all of his promises, but he says he is concerned by the way Trump thinks.
He truly believes that by definition, Donald Trump is the better person for almost any job. So if Donald Trump wants to be president, he assumes that that would be the best thing for the country, that no one else is better, and that whatever he does in pursuit of that goal is justified. It's a bizarre way of looking at the world. It's almost as if he were a king.
Trump became popular with the Republican base when he led a so-called birther movement, leading the argument that President Barack Obama shouldn't be president because he wasn't born in the United States.
If we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
The president would later lambaste Trump for it at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
That night, the political and media elite loudly laughed at him.
We want Trump now!
The people who have studied Trump say he is likely focused on the fact they aren't laughing now. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, Al Jazeera's James Bays has also been at that convention for the past 4 days. Let's cross to him now. James, over to you.
Yes, Darren, it's getting a little quieter here. The balloons are all on the ground, and there is a pastor speaking to all of those here at the convention, giving us a time now. It's a little quieter, perhaps, to go through and assess some of the key points of this, the most important speech of these 4 days that we've heard in the last hour, over an hour, here at the convention. Joining me is Jason Dick. He's the deputy editor of CQ, that's Congressional Quarterly. Jason, let's start with the general tone of this speech. To me, it painted a pretty dark, bleak picture of the state of the United States.
It did. It certainly was. It seemed almost dystopic. A place where crime is rampant, and we have no borders, and we have no. Mr. Trump kept on coming back to this idea that he would be the law and order candidate, that our laws are not being enforced, and it doesn't really bear a lot of resemblance to the reality of a lot of people's lives, at least according to almost all independent ways of measuring that reality.
Having said that, there is a spike in violent crime in some of the big cities, but then you look at all over the country, we're at a sort of historic low level of crime. Is that right?
There is. We have had a downward. Violent crime is down almost across the board. Actually, it's a very steady trend downward since 1991, which is the height of the crack cocaine epidemic. It has spiked a little bit in the last year, but partially that was because 2014 in particular, the murder rate was so low in large cities, and so there was a little bit of an uptick. But overall, crime is down.
Another thing, of course, you focused on and linked it to crime was illegal immigration to the United States. Earlier on in the convention, we saw various people who said they were, and the caption came up, victims of illegal immigrants. In fact, they were victims of drunk drivers who happened to be illegal immigrants.
Correct, and not to take away from any of these tragic circumstances that happen, regardless of the immigration status, but illegal immigration, the rate of illegal immigration is actually fairly level right now. As many people are leaving, as many illegal immigrants are leaving the country as are coming into the country right now.
And then, of course, there was the issue of international trade and the way he wants to change the trade deals that the U.S. has signed up to. I thought it was interesting that passage, when he first mentioned international trade, he then mentioned his vice presidential candidate, who actually, in the past, completely disagrees with him on this.
Correct. I mean, traditionally, the Republican Party has been the bastion of free trade. They've fought for years, particularly in the early 2000s, leading all the way up to the last couple of years, of which Mike Pence was a member of the House of Representatives and voted and supported for trade deals. He also, as the governor of Indiana, supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, which Trump, really sort of vehemently went into, got a big applause line for saying that he would rip it up and wouldn't be, he wouldn't, make us beholden to unelected, bureaucrats and so forth. It puts him completely at odds with the Republican orthodoxy over the last several generations on trade.
But this is clearly an issue that resonates with the public, and it's an issue that his opponent, Hillary Clinton, has flipped on.
It is. I mean, and partially that is that trade for a long time now, for at least several presidential cycles, the last couple of political generations, has been a bipartisan issue. President Clinton's trade deals were negotiated with a Republican Congress. George W. Bush and his, trade team negotiated deals that had bipartisan support. So it's been a bipartisan issue. Hillary Clinton did change her position, and part of that was a reaction to how much traction Bernie Sanders had gotten in the primary.
I'll speak up to make sure you can hear me, because as you can hear, the band has started again. The attacks on Hillary Clinton, he's painting this as some sort of big conspiracy involving the media and big business.
It is, and it's extraordinary to stand on a stage, accept the nominee for a presidential a nomination, and to accuse your opponent of being a criminal. I mean, this isn't like a light charge, and we've seen this all week long where...
And you heard the chants from the crowd.
Right, the cheers, I mean, the chants of lock her up have been very consistent, and it is ironic that a nominee now, who is purporting to be the law and order candidate, wants to ignore the measured judgment of professionals in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, for instance, who said that Hillary Clinton did not commit any crime and they would not be indicting her. It is taken on sort of a lynch mob mentality, which I think makes some people, particularly people who do follow the law and enforce the law and try to prosecute the law, very nervous.
Let me ask you the difficult question, which is how you think this will be received, this speech, by two constituencies. First, by this divided Republican Party, and then I'm going to ask you about the public. But first, we've seen the divisions out in the open. Are they all firmly behind him after this speech?
I mean, the Republican Party is still relatively divided. Even here in Ohio, the home of Cleveland, the host city for the convention, the governor of Ohio, John Kasich, who lost to Donald Trump in the primaries, vowed not to step foot in this arena, and he did not. Rob Portman, a Republican senator who's running for re-election here in Ohio, has really kept his distance from the place. So even in Cleveland, it's not a united party. Now
we're running out of time. How will it resonate with the wider electorate very quickly?
I mean, it seems that he has obviously struck a chord, a very populist chord. Right now, he's not doing well with the parts of the population that have been growing or growing. Minorities, college-educated people. I mean, it's not. At this point, Hillary Clinton seems to have an edge, at least with the demographics.
Jason, thank you very much. So there we are, continuing to analyze the important speech here at the Republican Convention, which is now at an end.
All right, James Bays there in Cleveland, Ohio. James, thank you for that. You've been watching live there from Cleveland, Ohio, Donald Trump's speech. It was a long and wide-ranging speech attacking Hillary Clinton, from everything over immigration and Libya to foreign policy on Iran, Syria and Iraq. Well, that's it from me for the News Hour. We'll be back with another news bulletin in a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
Venezuela's Hugo Chavez became hugely popular for helping the poor. But his successor's attempts to emulate